This presentation looks at graphing and visual analysis. If you remember from the data collection presentation, the last step is to analyze our results. That's where graphing data comes in. The purposes of graphing our data is to be able to communicate about what we're seeing, to display relationships, and to summarize the data that we've collected. And the benefits are that it allows for immediate source of information, it's easy to learn, and it helps our independent judgment. The most commonly used graphs are line graphs and bar graphs. Additional graphs that you might hear about are cumulative records, semi-logarithmic charts, and scatter plots. We most frequently use line graphs here. On your screen, you'll see a sample picture of a line graph. We're looking at Mary's spelling performance, specifically at the words that she got correct over several observation sessions. Line graphs have many parts. You'll go through this with your teachers and your instructional leaders and ABA therapists in the classroom, but to give you kind of an overview, your vertical axis, over on the left-hand side of the screen, is more commonly referred to as the y-axis. Right here, the y-axis is looking at the number of hits per minute. Your horizontal axis on the bottom of the screen is the x-axis. That's looking at the sessions. You've got condition change lines going through your graph. Those indicate some change to some part of the program for the student. Your data points are here, and the data path is the line that's drawn between the points. We also label the conditions at the top. What are we looking at? Baseline, blocking, back to baseline, blocking, back to baseline again, and then blocking. You don't need to memorize all this now. You'll go over it many times in your classroom. Here's another example of a sample line graph. This time we're looking at the number of initiations to peers over several dates. You can see where there's baseline, an intervention was put into place, and then the data points included over the intervention. Here's an example of a bar graph. On this particular graph, we're looking at percent completion over accuracy in baseline, and then in the generalization and maintenance phase. When we go to visually analyze our graphs, we want to make sure that we scan the entire graph. We want to read the figure captions, read the condition and axis labels, look at the scales, figure out exactly what we're looking at before we try to analyze our data. And then we want to examine the graphs. We want to look at the number of data points available to us, the nature of the variability, the level, and the directions of trends. And we'll talk about all those things. Variability looks at how different or spread out the scores are from each other. So if we look at the red line compared to the blue line, you can see differences in variability. Take a second to rank the following from most variable to least variable. Hopefully you came up with something like this. The red line is the most variable line, the green line is the second most variable, and the blue line is the least variable line. The next thing we look at when we analyze our graphs is the trend, the direction the data path is going. So we like to talk about trend in terms of direction. It's either increasing, it's decreasing, or there's zero trend. We talk about the degree or the magnitude. It's happening rapidly or it's happening gradually. And we talk about the extent of variability. Is it stable or is it variable? Take a look at this line graph and use at least 2 words to describe the trend of this line. The trend is decreasing and it's doing so gradually. Let's try another one. Use at least 2 words to describe the trend of this line. For this one, there's zero trend, but our data points are extremely variable. Next, let's look at identifying which of our line graphs here are increasing in trend, which are decreasing, and which has zero trend. Hopefully this is what you came up with. Our black line has 0 trend, our red line is decreasing, and our blue line is increasing. Analyzing our data allows us to make data-based decisions. Some of those decisions might be to continue the intervention as it currently is, to modify the intervention, to discontinue the intervention, or to move on to a new goal. All of these data-based decisions will be team decisions made by you as an ABA therapist, the instructional leader in your classroom, and the behavior analyst in your classroom. This is not a decision that any one person makes independently. Some reminders about graphing and visual analysis. Accurate graphing is key to the program, so ask questions if you have them. Rather than making errors because you're unclear about something, make sure that you're asking folks around you. Make yourself aware of what you're looking for as you visually analyze a graph. Do you want to see an increasing or decreasing trend for this particular behavior? And know that data should always be ready for visual analysis. Graph daily. Because we want our programs to be extremely fluid and work with what our students need in the moment, it's possible that at any given moment, your behavior analyst, your instructional leader may need to analyze your graph. Make sure that your graphs are up to date and that you're graphing daily.